He shot his wife. Then he shot the family dog. But the neighbors didn't hear a single bark, because the Golden Lab knew exactly who was holding the gun. June 5, 2020, 5 a.m. Matthew Speck calls 911 from his Eagle Landing home, voice shaking, breathing heavy. He reports 2 intruders attacked him and his wife while they slept. Officers arrive to find the house locked tight. No forced entry. No broken windows. Inside, wallets and electronics remain untouched. On the second floor, they discover Caitlyn Speck unresponsive on the bed. At the foot of the bed lies the family's golden Labrador, Bailey May. She is also gone. Matthew greets officers with blood on his clothes and fresh cuts on his arms and abdomen. He claims a violent struggle occurred, but investigators immediately notice contradictions. Nothing has been ransacked. No drawers opened. The scene feels staged. Caitlyn Conran met Matthew Speck in 2008 at a community event. She worked from home as a designer, spending her days in the 2-story Eagle Landing house she loved. Bailey May, her golden lab, was her constant companion. By 2020, Matthew was 37 and had lived with Caitlyn for years. Their life appeared steady. Caitlyn planned home renovations, sketched designs, and maintained her routines. But friends noticed Matthew growing emotionally distant. He spent more time away from home. Their conversations turned cold. Despite this, Caitlyn never sought separation. She kept pouring energy into the house. She never knew that her sanctuary had become the subject of calculated planning by the man she trusted. An ex-girlfriend provided damning testimony. Matthew had reconnected with her months before the murder. He sent messages stating his marriage was a formality he intended to take care of soon. He wanted to start a new life with her. But his co-worker painted a different picture. Matthew rarely complained about Caitlyn personally. He focused on the legal complications of divorce. He repeatedly said Caitlyn would never agree to sell their home. He asked his co-worker what happens to shared real estate when a spouse dies unexpectedly. This question revealed his true motive. Removing Caitlyn meant keeping the house, avoiding financial obligations, and pursuing his new relationship without consequences. Forensic teams found no forced entry. The front door had a deadbolt and latch that could only be locked from inside. All windows were unbroken and tightly sealed. Inside, the house was spotless. No footprints. No dirt streaks. No signs of a struggle in the hallways. The bedroom where Caitlyn died was a sealed space. For intruders to have exited, they would have had to relock the deadbolt from inside, an impossible move unless they had keys or were still present. No lockpicks or spare keys were found. The mechanics of the doors and windows pointed to one conclusion. When shots were fired, the only living beings in that house were Caitlyn, Matthew, and the dog. At the hospital, doctors examined Matthew's injuries. He claimed they came from fighting armed intruders. But forensic specialists identified them as self-inflicted. The cuts were shallow with smooth edges, not jagged lacerations from a struggle. There were no defensive wounds on his hands or palms. The placement on his forearms and abdomen was easily reachable by himself. Bloodstains suggested he was standing still when injured. In a real attack, blood patterns would show sprays, smears, and chaos. Instead, they found clean, controlled marks. Medical reports confirmed none were life-threatening. He had cut himself in front of a mirror, carefully avoiding major arteries, to look like a victim. Bailey May was shot at close range with the same weapon used on Caitlyn. She lay in her usual spot by the bed, never trying to attack or flee. She never saw it coming. Neighbors confirmed Bailey May barked at strangers. But that morning, no one heard a single bark until the gunshots. The dog recognized the person who moved through the house. She saw no threat until it was too late. Why would robbers waste a bullet on a sleeping pet? Matthew claimed they killed her just because. The logic didn't hold. The shooting was calculated. The killer knew the dog could betray him with her reaction or ruin the illusion of a break-in. Tech experts extracted data from Matthew's phone and computer. His browser history revealed dozens of visits to pages about toxicology and staging criminal scenes. He spent hours on specialized forums gathering information. Screenshots showed maps with potential exit routes from the neighborhood. The timing was damning. These searches occurred late at night, while Caitlyn slept in the next room. The timestamps contradicted his claims of a happy marriage. His digital footprint was a roadmap of premeditation. The prosecutors would later read his searches aloud in court. How to fake a robbery. Lethal dose of cyanide. The evidence was undeniable. Matthew had been planning the crime for days. Detectives used logic traps in the interrogation room. When Matthew claimed he chased intruders to the door, they asked how police found it locked from inside. He had no answer. He stumbled over his timeline, first suggesting he locked it in shock, then calling the intruders phantoms. They presented forensic reports on his wounds and the lack of gunpowder residue on his clothing. His story collapsed, but the final blow came when they read his search history aloud. How to fake a robbery. Matthew went silent. The room fell still. The airtight home, the surgical cuts, the browser history. No more talk of mysterious strangers. He was placed under arrest and never offered an explanation. Investigators reconstructed the timeline. Events began hours before the 5 a.m. call. Matthew waited until Caitlyn slept. He retrieved a prepped weapon. He fired the first shots in the upstairs bedroom. Caitlyn never reacted. He then turned the weapon on Bailey May, who showed no aggression toward her owner. With both gone, he staged the scene, selectively avoiding damage to valuable items he intended to keep. He went to the bathroom and inflicted shallow cuts on his arms and abdomen in front of a mirror. He waited until daylight, then called 911. Blood on Caitlyn and the dog had already dried. Every action was calculated and deliberate. In November 2024, the trial began. Prosecutor Alexander Myers let experts speak. A pathologist showed Matthew's wounds were self-inflicted. Ballistics proved the shooter stood still. Testimony from his ex-girlfriend and co-worker revealed motive. After 5 days, the jury deliberated briefly. Matthew Speck was found guilty of premeditated homicide, cruelty to an animal, and unlawful use of a firearm. Judge Deidre Jefferson sentenced him to life without parole, plus 10 years. The Eagle Landing home transferred to Caitlyn's heirs. Under state law, a person cannot benefit from their crime. Matthew serves his sentence with no possibility of release. Caitlyn and Bailey May are at peace.